Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the ABA Law Practice Division Succeeding as Outside Counsel GC panel. My name is Rod Boddie. I'm a senior advisor for the Wickford Group and the general counsel for Seneca One, and I have the pleasure of moderating this panel today. And this is the first of a series of panels that the ABA will be doing that addresses the issues of dealing with outside counsel's dealings with their clients. So we hope you not only enjoy this program, but we hope you join us for other programs as well. And before I introduce our esteemed panelists, there are a few housekeeping items that I want to address. First and foremost, because you are a viewer of this program, you have an opportunity to win a $100 Amazon gift card. At about 30 minutes into the program, I'm going to ask a question about our panelists or about the panel or any issue that arises during the first 30 minutes of the panel. And anybody who answers the question correctly and emails that correct answer to panel@thewickfordgroup.com will be eligible to win the $100 Amazon gift card. So out of all eligible entries, we're going to choose two randomly. And those two random drawings, each one will win a $100 Amazon gift card and a copy of this, Succeeding as Outside Counsel, as published by the American Bar Association. Now, each eligible entry must be submitted at panel@thewickfordgroup.com prior to 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time today. So any entry received by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time today with the correct answer will be an eligible entry. 5 additional correct entries will be drawn at random, and each 5 of those entrants will also win a copy of Succeeding as Outside Counsel. So our goal is here to let everybody go home a winner today. And I would like to give a special thanks to Claritas Data Solutions. They will be our sponsor for the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. And Claritas is an emerging litigation support technology company bringing a new standard of service to the e-discovery industry. And just so you know, Claritas is a hidden jewel in the e-discovery industry. So if you don't know them, it's probably a good time to get to know them. Also, second item, in the last 10 minutes of the program, we're going to leave that time open for the panelists to answer your questions from the viewers. So if you have any questions during the program, at any time during the program, please email those questions to panel@thewickfordgroup.com, panel@thewickfordgroup.com. And we will try and get through as many of those questions as possible. So the earlier you email them, the better, because you go to the top of the list, and we're going to try and run through them as quickly as possible. Now, keep in mind, this is a very informal program. This is supposed to be a dialogue between you and the in-house counsel. It's not a stiff and formal program, so we want you to participate. We want to hear from you. This is for you, so we want to make sure we're addressing the issues that you want us to address. And you'll also see that we are using earbuds today. This is actually the ABA Law Practice Division's first program done on Google Hangout. So we're wearing earbuds to make sure that you get the very best quality of sound. And you may see some choppiness in some of the pictures of some of the panelists, but you know, that's the internet, that's live streaming. That's technology glitches that we have to deal with, but you're going to get some great content here. So I don't think that technology piece is going to be much of an issue. Additionally, the Wickford Group will be putting together a summary of today's program, and that summary will include some suggested action items and action plans that outside counsel can take in response and in connection to some of the comments made by the panelists today. So if you have an interest in receiving that summary, again, you can email that request to panel@thewickfordgroup.com, panel@thewickfordgroup.com. Now, for those of you who may not be able to stay with us for the entire presentation, or for those of you who know people who may want to join but have a conflict in schedule, fear not, because this program will be recorded and it will be kept on the ABA Law Practice Division's YouTube page. So it will be there in perpetuity for you to review at your leisure. And lastly, I need to address the fact that all opinions of the panelists are those solely of the panelists, and they're not the opinions of the ABA, the Wickford Group, or Claritas Data Solutions. So thank you for your indulgence in that, and now we get to meet our panelists. First is Janice Block. Janice is the Executive Vice President and Chief Legal and Administrative Officer of Kaplan, Inc. She's been practicing in-house for 15 years. Janice, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me today, Rod.
I wanted to give our viewers a little bit of perspective. So one thing, a quick question I'd like to ask, how many outside counsel do you use at Kaplan?
So right now our roster of outside counsel that we use around the globe is about 30 firms on a regular basis.
Okay. And what percentage of your work is it stays in-house and what percentage goes outside?
You know, it's hard to get an exact percentage, but I'd say it's about 50-50.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you for that. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. Next up on the list is Francis Drelling. Francis is the General Counsel. You saw Francis just pop up at the bottom of the screen. He's the General Counsel of the Restaurants Division of Specialty Restaurants Corporation. He's been practicing in-house for over 9 years. Francis, thank you for making it right under the wire. We appreciate you joining.
Thank you, Rod. We just had a few technical difficulties.
Understood. That's the joy of live streaming on the internet, I guess. Francis, we just wanted to give the viewers a little bit of perspective. How many outside counsel do you use? And what percentage of that work is done in-house and what percentage do you send outside?
We select our outside counsel based upon the subject matter and the location of our need at the time, so that will always vary. But we have an easy 10 to 15 that we may use across the country.
Okay.
And as far as the work that goes out, it feels like 1,000% stays in, but we actually send out all the specialty work. That would be all the litigation, intellectual property, zoning, ABC type matters, things I feel best done in the field or which require boots on the ground.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. We're going to get that back to a couple of issues you raised there. Next up is Joanne Moffic-Silver. Joanne is the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for the Chicago Board Options Exchange. Joanne's been practicing in-house for about 30 years. Joanne, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. It's nice to be there. Here.
Same question posed to you about how many outside counsel do you use and what percentage of your work is sent outside versus kept inside?
Well, I use as many outside counsel as it takes.
Oh, that's great news.
Yes. So season is open field, but actually at any given time I could be using 15 law firms depending on what type of legal work we're involved in. And I would say that 60% of the work is done by outside counsel and the remainder in-house, but that also varies depending on, in particular, the litigation that we're involved in.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. And last but certainly not least is Kristen Shaheen. Kristen is General Counsel of OpinionLab, and she's been practicing in-house for a little over 3 years. Kristen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm the new kid on the block. I hail from a litigation background, which is a little bit odd. Yes. Thank you for having me. And in answer to the question that you have posed to the other panelists, about 85% of the work stays in-house. I send out about 15%. So quite a bit remains with us at OpinionLab. And right now, we have about 5 firms on retainer that we use for various matters that come our way.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you all for that perspective. And one of the things I do want to provide here is a little perspective. And in the book, Succeeding as Outside Counsel, in the first part, what I tried to do is give the reader kind of an insight, a view, a peek into the world of in-house counsel. And that's what I want to do here. I kind of want to start with that peek into the world of in-house counsel. And Janice, let's start with you if we can. Can you briefly describe your role within your company and maybe talk about something about your role or something about your day-to-day know that might benefit them to know?
Sure, and stop me if I talk too much because there's a lot of hats that we wear.
I can imagine.
So, as you said earlier, I'm both the Chief Legal Officer and the Chief Administrative Officer for Kaplan, which is a global education company in all areas of education. So I run 5 departments: our legal department, our regulatory affairs and government relations, compliance, human resources, and then also
Janice,
our talent and leadership development, which has become a functional area in and of itself. And very
froze. Janice, we'll get back to you. Kristen?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, you were frozen on my screen, Rod, but hopefully
sorry about that.
That's okay. Hopefully everyone else is hearing us, so that's why I hesitated for a minute. But anyway, I said legal, regulatory affairs, compliance, government relations, human resources, talent development. And then I'm also responsible as the CAO of the company for coordinating our executive leadership team. So all of the meetings that we do, the agenda that we set, the priorities, etc., those start with me working with my boss, our CEO. So that's maybe something that some of my outside counsel might not know. And then, as I said, there's so many hats that we wear. Joanne Moffic-Silver and I have co-chaired a conference together before where we've come up with dozens of hats that we wear, from trusted advisor to problem solver, business partner, advocate, leader, visionary, strategist, decision maker, risk mitigator, consensus builder, negotiator, mediator, mentor, trainer, project manager, multitasker, and the voice of reason. Right. Those are the ones that I think of. But I think that outside counsel wear those hats too, and I'm sure we'll talk about that.
That's right. All right. Thank you for that, Janice. Kristen, how about you? Can you please tell us a little bit about your role inside and something that outside counsel doesn't know that could benefit them?
Sure. So I hail from a small company. We're approximately 100 folks right now. So I'm sort of the go-to person from all departments. And it may be that I'm speaking with the departments or with the executive team, but I also deal every single day with the sales team, with the marketing department, with the individuals that work within our organization. So it's a great opportunity to have my fingers in every single department and have those personal relationships. But it does mean that my phone's ringing off the hook. People are texting me. If they're not getting me on my phone, they're calling my cell phone. It's sort of a 24/7 job, 365 days a week. And I think that sometimes there's that misnomer out there that inside counsel means banker's hours, 9 to 5, and we're done at the end of the day, and that's not the case at all.
That is not the case. You're absolutely right. And I think any outside counsel who's providing legal services to their in-house counsel, thinking that it is a 9 to 5 job, is doing themselves a disservice as well as their client. Joanne, can you please tell us a little bit about your role and something that outside counsel may benefit by knowing about your role and responsibilities?
Sure. The role of general counsel, I think Janice described it really well, because there are multiple roles that we have. I would describe it as being like a CEO of the legal division. See, I just promoted myself.
Congratulations.
And that's there's a two-part role. One is managing the legal division and all of the work, as well as making decisions about what work goes to outside counsel and what work stays in-house. And the other is serving as counsel. And I serve as counsel to our board of directors as well as to our senior executives and our management. And in terms of day-to-day role that my outside counsel might not know, they should know. It's not day-to-day, it's day-to-night, day through night. And it's basically a job that demands total commitment and reachability. And that's what I do expect from my outside counsel, is total commitment and reachability.
Right. Okay, thank you, Joanne. Francis, same question to you. A little bit about your role and something about your role that outside counsel could benefit by knowing. Oh, sorry, Francis, you are muted. Francis, we can't hear you. Can you, Francis, if you can find a way to unmute yourself. Oh, there we go. Go ahead. Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Obviously an unintentional glitch there. I can't add any adjectives, or if I did, it'd be more the same. I would summarize what other people have said is, we truly are the chief cook and head bottle washer. And it's kind of funny, I work in a restaurant company, so that really seems to apply to me. So let me put a little different twist on it so you get a better understanding as to what we do. We're a part of a team. We have to build a consensus. We just don't issue decrees. We have to motivate people. We're not officially in their direct operational chain of command, and that's what gets tricky. So we need to be those generals who can go out there and make things happen by winning and leading ourselves. We handle multiple matters every day. I get to go to lots of fun-filled meetings. I get to prepare reports, make presentations, field calls on any number of issues. We can be, a typical day is what I'm talking about. I could be reviewing contracts. I could get calls on HR personnel issues, IP, liquor, contracts, insurance, landlords, government entities, investigations, polygraphs. It's endless. It goes on and on and on. And as someone said, we're advisors and mentors and everything. We're all those things, handling 1,000 issues a day, jumping, and you better know where you're going to land when you jump. Mm-hmm. So we do lots of stuff, and that's why we need a lot of help.
Right, and that's great. And speaking of needing help, when you send work to outside counsel, and I'll start with you on this, Francis, since you're up, what goes into that calculation? When do you decide, okay, I'm going to keep this work inside, or I'm going to send this to outside counsel?
Well, the first question I ask myself is, what are my own capabilities? Can I do it? And what is my workload? Those are going to be two things that control. Then you look at the extent of the work, where it's located. Do we need boots on the ground? Is this going to be in New York, Florida? Is it litigation? All litigation goes out. Is it a specialty? Sometimes I'll dabble a little bit in specialties, but when it gets really complicated, I'll shift over, like an IP. When we're going to go to do a PTO filing, that's not going to be me. I'm going to shift that away. I'll handle states, but move other things out. Those are the kind of factors I look into it. And then I ask myself, who am I going to give it to, and how do I trust them, and how they performed before?
Right. Okay. And Joanne, a similar question to you. When you do decide to send work to outside counsel, how do you decide who to choose? For example, if it's a new matter and it's not one you've generally dealt with outside counsel on before, how do you select your outside counsel? Joanne, and you're currently muted. Well, let's let Joanne unmute, and I will ask that question of Kristen. Kristen, when you send something to outside counsel, how do you select your outside counsel when it's a new matter, something you haven't dealt with outside counsel?
I concur with Francis. If it's anything that's litigation related, that goes to our litigation firm. IP, same thing. If it's something that's on the fence, again, you look at what kind of bandwidth you have as far as your own work, whether it requires a particular expertise. In that case, then I go ahead and ship it out. Just depending on what the area is, would determine who it is that we send it to. But I think it's always nice to have a go-to firm that can handle sort of all matters for you, with the exception of who you use for your litigation, who you use for your IP. So sort of a generalist, a large international firm that can provide that assistance, so you don't always have to shop around when you don't frankly have the time. When you need to have an answer within the next half day, then you have those go-to folks.
Right, right. Janice, assuming you're in a similar situation as Kristen and you're sending work out to counsel that you're comfortable with and you're familiar with, assuming there's a situation that arises that doesn't fit the expertise of your current counsel, how do you go about finding new counsel for that job?
So we start with where we've worked in the past and people that we know. We'll typically put an email out to our whole team, and there's about 30 of our lawyers worldwide for Kaplan, and we'll see who people know. We might network with some of our colleagues. I'll talk to other chief legal officers, general counsel that I know. And we may have somebody do a little bit of research to find out who happens to be a specialist in the area. We have developed something at Kaplan that a lot of other companies are using now called the expedited RFP, where we will ask about 7 to 10 firms to do an expedited request for proposal. None of us have time to read the kind of tomes that I used to prepare when I was a partner in a law firm and had to go in and do a client pitch. And so instead, we have 5 categories that we ask outside counsel to tell us about in an email. And we'll typically ask for a pretty tight turnaround too, because we want to see how nimble and quick our outside counsel can be in responding to our request. And after we do that, we'll get together as a team and we'll narrow it down to a couple firms. And then we typically invite the firms in, and we'll do something like this, a Google Hangout, because we do want to meet people in person and have the opportunity to make sure that it's the right fit after we've found a firm with the right expertise, the right geographic reach, etc.
What is it that usually kind of tilts the scale in favor of the firm that you choose in an expedited RFP? I know that's a big concern for outside counsel right now. Sometimes they feel like clients are just picking the name out of a hat sometimes. So what things do you look for that really kind of catch your attention in how somebody completes an RFP?
So there's a lot of criteria that we look for. Some of it is communication style and whether or not the outside lawyers are willing to adapt to ours and care about what is important to us, how they package information. We want to know how much they know about our business and whether they're as passionate about our business, our sector, our industry as we are. We also actually watch for how our outside counsel treat other people. We observe how they treat the receptionist when they come in, our administrative assistants, the tech person that comes to help with the Google Hangout or whatever, because our outside counsel are going to be our goodwill ambassadors, our agents in front of regulators, in front of judges, in front of our own business clients, and we need to make sure that they have the right touch and the kind of touch that we have.
Right. Great. Joanne, does the CBOE use RFP or expedited RFPs to find their outside counsel?
I do, but I don't use written ones.
Oh, you don't? Okay, well that's interesting.
Sometimes I do. I actually have been practicing long enough where I have a pool of very skilled outside counsel from various law firms. But there are occasions when I do need to find a lawyer that has a certain expertise that we don't otherwise have. And what I do then is I might call somebody like Janice, and she knows a lot of law firms, and I will call colleagues of mine and get some recommendations. I'll ask my own in-house staff who work for law firms for recommendations. And when we start to narrow down the names, I do make sure that I interview them and then figure out which one would suit us best. And so we'll start out with the expertise and the experience. But once we're past that, I look a lot for people that can problem solve and think outside the box to help us reach our goals. And that's a little bit of a different skill.
Right. Right. All right. Well, thank you for that. Francis, when you have found your outside counsel, whether it's somebody you have used before or somebody you found through another process, what is your expectation from that outside counsel as far as work product or communication when you actually send work to them?
Well, I have a lot of expectations. I expect them to give me the skill sets that I've hired them for. But one of the most important expectations I have, because all the lawyers should have the skill sets or they wouldn't be there, is communication. We've got a lot going on here every day, and I need someone who can communicate with me. I really look for quick phone calls. I can't wait a week later. I've got a boss who, if he knows something's happening, he may be pounding on my door, 10 minutes after the event saying, what happened? So I need a guy who's going to pick up the phone and talk to me and say, here's what just happened today, here's what we did, and here's what's going on. Send me a confirming email afterwards. So communication is one of the most key things, skill aside. Another key thing is budgets. And I think there's a real problem out there with outside counsel not understanding how important budgets are to in-house counsel. They don't realize we are judged by budgets. Our bosses believe that every operational department can meet a budget. Why can't the legal department? And why does it seem that in every case, oh, gee, boss, things changed? I can't have a worst-case budget every time. I've got to have a reasonable budget. When we have a budget, we understand that we're not going to get the Cadillac representation maybe because of the budget we've given you, but that Chevy should get us to the ball game nonetheless. So I need good communication and I need good adherence to budgets. skill sets aside.
Right. All right, thank you for that. Kristen, same question. When you send work to outside counsel, what sorts of things are you looking for from them?
Well, I absolutely agree with Francis with respect to the budget. That's critical. And I don't think that there is an appreciation for that and the pressure that internally we face, having to conform with the budgets and then justify if we're outside the budget. Certainly, we can't plan for every scenario. If a patent troll pops up, it is what it is. We do our best to mitigate, but that is critical. A second thing that I really look for is the team approach, that we're all on the same team, that you know my business inside and out to the best of your abilities as being outside counsel, and that you take the time to learn it. We recently just hired a new firm, and of their own initiative, they asked to sit down with our VP of sales and a representative sales to hear a sales pitch, so they knew exactly what it is that we sell, and then follow up with questions on the back end to understand what are we doing on the back end, processing data, what are the different restrictions that we face. And they did that on their own time, and I think it led to a more efficient work product and a better understanding of the challenges that we face, as well as our business as a whole. And I thought that that was fantastic. Just, again, continued communication is critical. If I call you, if I email you, get back to me in a timely fashion. And if you can't, let me know right away. I got your call, I got your email. I'll back you in the next couple of hours. This is what's going on.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I think communication is key. And I think communication can even address both of your issues about budgets. To the extent that there are issues that affect the budget and outside counsel is communicating those changes in the issues, it helps you manage the budgets because the outside counsel is managing your expectations. So the more they communicate, the more they're able to manage your expectation. Francis, I see you have something to add to that.
Right. It's true to communicate with the in-house counsel to manage our expectations, but when I talk budget failures, I'm talking I don't believe a lot of the outside teams discuss the budgets themselves. When you give an associate a job, you should tell them, I'm looking for this much time on the job. That depot should only take you 3 hours. I don't want to know where they went to elementary school. Things like that. That's what I'm talking about. You got to get with your team.
That's a great point. Great point. Janice, what are your expectations outside counsel? I know Joanne mentioned she wants somebody who is able to work with the team and help reach their goals. Do you have any specific expectations that weren't addressed by the other panelists?
A lot of them were addressed by the other panelists. I want to talk also about this budgeting and forecasting topic, though.
Sure. This
is critical to us. When we have matters, we ask that our outside counsel set cost estimates for us. And for those of us, I spent 12 years in private practice before going in-house, and understand that there's a lot of flexibility in budgets, and sometimes they move. And when they do move, what we need is a heads up. We want predictability. We don't want surprises when it comes to what we're spending our resources on. And we have to be able to, apprise our clients of what's going on as well. So to me, that's been one of the most challenging areas with outside counsel. And to make it much more tighter and controlled at Kaplan, one of the things I've done is instituted a very tight invoicing rule. If an outside firm wants to do work for us, they must turn their invoices into us by the first Friday of every month. I've got to have a monthly run rate, and I've got to know accurately on a monthly basis what my outside legal spend is. And so firms that can't keep up with that are not going to be one of our outside vendors. And it's really helped having that kind of accuracy, because we used to have situations where law firms, for whatever reason, would hold their bills, and several months later, 6 months later, I've had horror stories when I joined the company of, firms finding out I was the new sheriff in town and saying, oh, here's a bill. It's 3 years old, so we can't have that happen.
Right.
I just want to say also that outside counsel need to be able to walk in our shoes, to really understand what our jobs are like. And I encourage outside counsel who are willing to invest the time to really understand our business to shadow me or shadow members of my team. We are more than happy to have you visit and watch what we do on a daily basis, so you can get a flavor and create ideas for how you can be most helpful to us. So I have one outside counsel 4 years ago when I went on my honeymoon, who actually came and sat in my chair and did my job for 2 weeks so that I could really have a honeymoon, and it was outstanding.
That's great. That's great. Well, we will get back to that subject and others, but I'm looking at the clock. It's 30 minutes past the time, so it's time to give away the $100 Amazon gift card, or 2 Amazon gift cards. So the question is, what legal area do all panelists typically send work to outside counsel for? And you know what, I'll make this one a little easier. I'll make it multiple choice. Talking mergers and acquisition, litigation, or securities. What legal area do all our panelists typically send work to outside counsel for? You can email your answers to panel, P-A-N-E-L, at thewickfordgroup.com, and we'll announce the winner by 11. Now, thank you for doing that, Francis, because I should say that all panelists, the ABA, Claritas Data Solutions, and the Wickford Group, and the direct family members are not eligible participants. So email your answers to panel at thewickfordgroup.com, and the winner will be announced by Friday this week at 11:59 p.m. So thank you. We hope we get a lot of entries. Well, building on that, Joanne, I want to go to you. We talked about a couple of things. We talked about when we send work to outside counsel, how we select our outside counsel, what our expectations are for outside counsel when we send them work. Joanne, do you have an example, an instance of outside counsel who actually exceeded your expectation to really hit the ball out of the park? Because I think that could be beneficial for some of our viewing outside counsel to hear.
Well, I would say that I have examples, but I have to be discreet.
Of course.
And so, hoping that my outside counsel are watching this, you're all great. You all do a good job, or you wouldn't still be our outside counsel. I would say, you know, I have to go back to the issue of cost and budget. So, you know, succeeding is not winning at all costs. Succeeding is winning, and winning in all respects, based on the budget, based on collaboration. And I have a pretty protracted litigation that's almost over, but we've already won it. And during that long period of time, there were a lot of ups and downs. But critical to me was communication, obviously being responsive, and then staying within the budget. And when that didn't happen, my outside counsel agreed to partner with me. And there were times when outside counsel was willing to, you know, adjust the costs and work with me. Most importantly, though, you know, we win as a team, and we work as a team. And so I would say that the instances where it's hitting the ball outside the park, it's because we both, my in-house team and my outside counsel team, collaborated, and we're stronger together, and we're able to win. And we really haven't lost a case yet. I'm knocking on wood.
Wow.
And so I am very, very involved with outside counsel when we are litigating matters. And I have a very strong team here that is strategic, is collaborative, and has expertise in various areas. So I do look at this as a team approach. And without getting more specific, that's an example of how we win.
No, that's great. And obviously, it's difficult for outside counsel to participate in that team approach if they do not understand your business, a point that Kristen made. It's really critical that they understand the business in order to do that. Kristen, how about you? Can you give us an example of when outside counsel really just hit the ball out of the park for you?
Sure. Mine's more of a specific example, but it was truly the night before Thanksgiving, and I received a data privacy contract, and it was in Spanish. It was for a Mexican bank, and we needed to get it signed ASAP, and certainly they wanted it signed the next day, which was Thanksgiving for us. So I pinged my data privacy expert, who, unbeknownst to me, was fluent in Spanish. He translated the entire document into English, redlined it, gave me 2 separate documents, one explaining his red lines and one that I could provide directly to the client, so I didn't have to go back and remove his comments. And we were able to get it over, get it approved, and get it executed. So I thought that was hitting the ball out of the park, and he also was making 2 pies at the exact same time that we were having these discussions. So it was a real way to go. Did
he give you any of the pies?
He did not. He did not, but I was happy to get my contract.
Okay. Well, I would say he to that one then. Well, thank you for that. That was a good example. Janice and Francis, we'll get to you on those questions as well, but I do want to jump first to communication because that has been a big issue already discussed here. Other than communication with respect to a particular matter, is there communication, and Janice, I'll ask you first, is there communication that you expect or would like from outside counsel on that you typically don't get?
So I am a huge proponent, Rod, of what I call packaging information really well, whether it's verbally or in writing, whether it's in email or some other form of written documentation. And there's a way, I guess it's the former journalist in me, there's a way to get that lead sentence out right away. Tell me the bottom line at the top, get the executive summary out at the top, and then get to all the details. And so that's a style of writing that's really important to me because let's face it, I mean, we're often, you know, on our iPhone and traveling. You know, I've already logged close to 200,000 airline miles this year, and I have offices and homes in 2 locations. I'm in Fort Lauderdale today. That's where I'm talking to you from, but yesterday I was in our Chicago office. So it's really important to me that I can read this stuff in the fine print on an iPhone, and that requires getting to the punchline first.
Right. Francis, how about you? What type of communication would you like to see from your outside counsel, other than, you know, the matter, I mean, and it's important, I'm not belittling getting the updates on a particular matter, but above and beyond that, what type of communication would you like from your outside counsel?
Generally speaking, what I like to receive are phone calls. And I'm really busy. That's why I think phone calls work the best for me. Call me, my secretary or I will get it. I'll deal with you. We'll go back and forth and get it done. When I'm exchanging emails, I don't know your availability. I don't know mine. That could take forever to get those exchanged. So I am a big caller. I want to hear from you. I want those 1-minute calls. You can send me your confirming emails later. That's my favorite.
Oh, great. Joanne, I saw you nodding your head when Francis was talking about phone calls. Is that your preferred method of communication as well?
Actually, no. Oh. I prefer emails, and the reason being that I could look at those at my convenience. And I do have my emails on most of the time when I'm in my office, although I'm not in my office a lot. If people know that I can be reached through a text message, but I won't be able to really do much with that. I'll just know that there's a message. It's hard to fill in the day and the time with phone calls for me. So I go to the convenience method.
Right, and it's interesting, the 2 different styles and the 2 different preferences. I know I've spoken with a number of in-house counsel and other types of clients who are like Francis, who want the phone call, who want to talk to you real time. Others do like the email communication, but I think that in and of itself is instructive. I think it's important for outside counsel at the very beginning of the relationship to understand how you want your client communicating with you. If you're dealing with Francis and you're sending emails, he's not going to be too happy. So it's always good to get that worked out up front, I think. So Janice, let me hear about somebody who has hit the ball out of the park for you, outside counsel who's just done an exceptional job.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Kaplan had a case of first impression that was filed against us a couple of years ago, and that within this past year we won. It was a case involving the EEOC and whether or not companies can do credit checks and background checks on their employees. And we were doing credit checks on our executives, as well as all of our employees who work in finance and financial aid, who handle the government's money. This was a resounding victory, and in fact, it got a lot of media attention. And the Wall Street Journal even ran an op-ed and called our case victory. And I have to give a plug to the law firm, if that's okay.
That's great.
It was the Seyfarth Shaw law firm on this one. The Wall Street Journal called it the case victory of the year.
Wow, that's great. And you wouldn't be the first person to compliment Seyfarth Shaw. So it's great that you gave him the plug. Francis, how about you? Any example of a home run hit by your outside counsel?
Yes, but the first thing I'd like to note is what outside counsel should understand is there's home run hits in my mind and home runs hits in my boss's mind. So you're playing to two teams here. The executive team and the legal team who understands what you achieved, and the executive team who looks at it a little different. The executive team loves absolute victories where we whoop somebody in a case and we don't pay them any money. And that's one of my tops too. But let me give an example. We had a real estate transaction going down and a tenant who decided he was going to interfere with it. So what the tenant did is he basically put everybody on notice he was claiming a right to buy this property. It was a pretty hefty price tag on the property too. So he dragged us into court on this whole deal. So what our outside counsel was able to do is change the entire focus of this case. We attacked. We served a notice of eviction. We went and we inspected the property. We served a notice of eviction on this guy. The whole balance shifted. We went on the attack mode for the rest of the case. And we ultimately got the transaction done where we were able to sell the property, make our money, and get out of there. So it was a great job.
Yeah, sounds like a great job. And again, that sounds like a case where the client really needed to understand your business in order to kind of step it up and take you to the next level as far as client service is concerned.
That's the long-term relationship.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let's look at the flip side really quickly. Let me just ask one person. Joanne, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I know you like to speak in general terms, so you're not going to talk about anybody specifically. But where have you seen, or maybe we can talk about an area where outside counsel has kind of dropped the ball for you?
Okay, well, it's in an area, again, I'll go back to budget and costs, where with litigation it's really important to budget every phase, and to make sure that I don't have any surprises. So at one stage of litigation, we were working on an appeal, and I got an estimate, and maybe it was a few weeks before everything was due, and we were getting scheduled for oral argument. The invoice came in, and not on that last Friday of every month or the first day of the month that Janice was talking about, but it was a little late. And so I wasn't alerted. It was a lot. I mean, 2 or 3 times the estimate. It was so much that my own bosses would judge me as being an inefficient, poor manager. And so, you know, it was a disaster, actually. And it didn't resolve itself easily. So for outside counsel that know how important this is and know that there are a lot of extra hours that are put into different aspects of litigation, to know that when it really goes out of control, they need to address that and be a partner. And so it actually hurt my relationship, my long-term perspective of using this law firm again, because I didn't feel like the law firm understood or addressed the issue, which I believed was their issue, not mine.
Right.
So I learned a lesson, and I felt very disappointed. We did resolve it somewhat, but not. It was the fact that it wasn't quick. It wasn't, I get it, I hear you, and I've had other law firms do that, address the issues, fix it, meet me halfway, whatever it might be, but to disregard it, and then I'm stuck because this is the law firm that's winning a case for me. So that was a very bad situation for me. I learned a lot, and again, the win helps in the sense that sometimes you do have to spend everything to win, but you shouldn't have to. So I like the idea of law firms being very sensitive to clients' needs and partnering. Has to happen.
Okay, great. Well, one thing I want to do is we talked about perspective, and sometimes perspectives change. So, Kristen, let's talk about, I know you worked at a law firm before, and I'm just wondering, did you have any expectations or thoughts when you were at the law firm that have been completely dispelled now that you're in-house?
I don't think that I realized how many hats in-house counsel wears. I think that I assumed it was much more legal and less business than it actually is. We play a huge role in the business aspect of the organization, not just the legal. And that was something that I wasn't entirely aware of until I came into this role. You really do serve two masters, so to speak, and then, you know, in addition, if you also report to the board, you know, I sit as the secretary to the board. That's another hat that has an entirely different association and different implications with it. So just those different roles and what they mean and how sometimes they don't necessarily sync up, and what you have to do ethically and in the best interest of the organization sometimes can be a bit challenging.
Right, right. Janice, how about you? I know you worked at a law firm before going in-house.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Kristen just said. I feel the same way. And also just the emphasis we've been placing in this session, this panel, on budgeting and forecasting. A lot of us in law school didn't develop the type of finance skills that you need once you're in-house. I mean, not only do we have to be able to set a budget, we have to be able to reasonably forecast month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year, what our legal expenditures are going to be for each of our business units and by each type of legal spend in each category.
Right. Francis, you too?
I would agree with what you just heard. It's all true. What I would add that I found most startling for me when I came in-house was the different type of advice I was called upon to give, in addition to everything you just heard. When you're in a law firm and someone says, can I do something, and it's true of a lot of outside counsel, I think even now, they'll give you the law, the black letter law, if you will, yes or no. But the truth is, the reality is, we have operations we're running, and we need to take risks. We're not looking for a risk-free life. So what I have to do is tell the team, yes, you can go swimming, even though the outside lawyer would say, no, you can't. And I say, you just got to stay within, I don't know, 20 yards of the beach, so the sharks are going to be further out mostly. So we have to take risks. We have to advise on how to take those risks. And it's not simply no risk, zero tolerance. That's our business. That's how it works. Outside counsel need to understand that when giving advice.
Right, right. I agree with that. Hey, Kristen, I want to pose the question to you without putting you in a very awkward position. How about a situation where outside counsel has dropped the ball for you?
Sure. Well, in particular, it had to do with a case that we were involved in, litigation with another organization, and we had set up a call in advance to really strategize, to assess where we are, to determine where we were going to go next. And I had planned for at least 4 or 5 days, well enough for him and his team to prepare. So we all sat down on the call. We included executive members. And it turns out that we were able to determine that he was somewhere in his car driving to a deposition in the middle of nowhere. He didn't have the case file with him. He clearly hadn't prepared. And it was such a waste of time and such a terrible disappointment that within the week we decided, even though we were well into the litigation, that this is not the way we wanted to go moving forward. And that if you can't take the time to not only prepare but to at least pull over and have the file in your lap, then you're probably not the right firm for us.
Right, yeah, I would agree with that. Well, it's about 10 minutes left in the program, and I wanted to leave this opportunity open for you guys to answer questions from the viewers, and we have a few right here. One I want to read, and Joanne, let's direct this one to you. An attorney is trying to develop a transactional practice serving small to medium-sized businesses, but would also love to start working with in-house departments at large companies. Do you have any tips or red flags when it comes to acquiring clients as outside counsel, especially given the ethical restrictions regarding advertising?
Okay. Want to run that by me once more?
Yeah, this is a transactional lawyer who usually serves small and medium-sized businesses, and he's looking to start providing businesses to larger in-house legal departments. So he's looking for any tips or red flags when it comes to acquiring clients as outside counsel, I guess you, especially given the ethical restrictions regarding advertising. Well, you know what? I guess he's asking you for advice on how to advertise as opposed to what you're looking for somebody who's actually reaching out to you directly. So that's a difficult question for you to answer. Well, let me flip this question a little bit then. If you're being solicited by somebody who has who wasn't referred to you, or you haven't done business with, what sorts of things would kind of entice you to do business with that lawyer?
Well, I would definitely look at the lawyer's credentials. So go on Google or the law firm and find out everything I can about the lawyer. And then I would ask my colleagues, including outside counsel, without them really knowing that they may have competition. I would try to find out as much as I can about the lawyer. That doesn't really happen much because, you know, we're a regulated entity, we're a public company, and so I have to be very, very careful with the lawyers that I engage, and usually they're lawyers that are with the larger law firms. However, if a person has a specialty, and I'm looking for a specialty, if somebody does solicit me and I see something that's impressive, then I'll definitely keep that in mind. I won't forget. But, you know, I think lawyers that know CBOE and know what we do, those lawyers that might solicit me to open the door for them, I would try to find out as much as I can. Why would I use them as opposed to one of the lawyers at the large law firms that I use? And by the way, I have done that. I have been convinced that a lawyer with a small firm could provide a legal opinion for us, an expert legal opinion, at a very cost-effective way. So it can work. But I'm glad you rephrased the question.
Sure. Another question here, and I think Janice and Kristen touched on this a little bit. So Francis, I'll pose this to you. Understanding that it is critical for outside counsel to understand the client's business, how deeply do you expect outside counsel to learn the client's business? I guess the question is, how deep should somebody dig to find out information about your business? And I guess what are there good ways to go about finding about information on your business?
Well, we're a private company, so they can check our website, and we have a number of restaurants. I always ask all counsel, have you ever been to any of our restaurants? I can tell you right now, that's a question I'm going to ask you. And when they say no, I say, okay. So that's really important, that they know our restaurants, they know who we are. I expect them, though, to understand our corporate structure. This is silly, I've had people who write briefs misspelling our name. I'm sorry, let me use the vernacular, come on. It's like you got to know your client's name or your client's corporate structure. We had a situation where someone didn't even understand our corporate structure, which resulted in me basically saying I'm never going to use that lawyer ever again because of what happened as a result of that. Wow. But it's very important for them to know us as a client. My boss, I'm going to tell you right now, I told you there's two teams here. There's me, and I understand what you're doing, and there's my boss, who's a non-lawyer. For his part, if you don't know how to spell our name or you don't know our structure, then your legal skills are not worthy of being retained, period. Close the book.
Wow. Another question just popped up for you, Kristen. I will pose it. Other than relevant legal updates, what type of information do you expect or wish you received from your outside counsel?
Sure. So given the vastness of what we face on a daily basis, we can't always stay current on changes of the laws, the nuances, especially the international laws and how they affect us. I expect that if we have a relationship, you will always look out for things that I may not be aware of, and just send me an email saying, hey, this may affect you. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. Have you thought about this and that? So sort of proactively, not drumming up business, but being a team player, so that we are the best organization we can be in full compliance at all times, especially if you see something coming down the pike that will directly affect our business. Let me know. Give me the heads up. And don't bill me for it. Just keep it, thinking of you, this is what I found, passing it on.
Right. That's valuable information. Janice, would you agree with that? Is there anything you would add to that?
I really agree with that, and I feel like I keep focusing on billing and invoicing and budgeting a lot in this session. But to piggyback off of what Kristen just said, one of my outside counsel nightmare stories that I tell from time to time happened many years ago when I was general counsel at another education company. And shortly after I joined that education company, a 60 Minutes documentary had just run that focused in large part on the company and some of the things that were going on there. Part of the reason they needed their first in-house general counsel. Mm-hmm. And I got my first set of bills from all of their outside law firms. All but one of their 14 outside law firms billed the company for watching 60 Minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
But they didn't just bill for the 3 minutes of that particular segment. They billed for the entire hour, the commercials, all the other segments, and multiple attorneys at each of these firms billed. But then to make it worse, they billed for all of the water cooler and hallway conversations and meetings they had about the 60 Minutes episode, unapproved legal work as well. So when you totaled up 13 firms with multiple lawyers billing for all of that, it was an astonishing number.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
This is something I've never forgotten, and it's one I like to tell from time to time.
Right, and based on the comments that we've gotten from all the panelists so far, clearly there needs to be another program on billing, how outside counsel and in-house counsel can work together on billing issues.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
I think that an outside law firm hits the ball out of the park when they send the client new case law that was made in the areas that the client practices in. That is so important, and so I cherish that, and the law firms that do that, they score points with me. And in addition to that, if there are new cases filed or anything that's happening that affects and can affect our business, that's the kind of information I want to get, and I want to get it first. Just thought I would add that.
I would agree with you. Thank you very much for that. And I'll add a little bit to the communication piece, and that is, although I love to get legal updates from outside counsel, oftentimes they'll just email me an article about a particular issue that could be relevant to my business, but I don't always have the time to read every article that's sent to me. So what I'd love to see is an article sent with a little summary. Here's what the article says, and here's how it could affect your business. And so I can just read a little paragraph rather than having to read a whole article to determine whether or not it actually does affect my business. But that's my preference. I'm not sure how everybody else feels about that. But I'm looking at the clock, and the clock on the wall says, looks like we have to wrap this up. So I would love to say thank you to you panelists. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to participate on this panel. You provided some fantastic information to our audience. And just so our viewers know, I have been a thorn in these panelists' side for the last 2 weeks, just pinging them with emails and asking for information, and they've been very flexible and indulgent of my peskiness, and I appreciate them for joining us and providing some fantastic information. Francis?
You got to tell us who won the prize.
That's a great question, and the answer will be Friday before 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. But I would also like to thank Claritas Data Solutions for sponsoring the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. And a very special thanks to Austin and Rose at the ABA and to Valeria Bailey. We would have never been able to get this program off the ground without you guys. And the technological glitches notwithstanding, I think we had some great content and everything worked well here. And by the way, this was the ABA Law Practice Division's first program on Google Hangout. So I thought it went relatively well. The little choppiness in the screen, but like I said, we had great content. But again, this is the first program in a series of programs, and the next program will be in November, mid-November, on a date to be determined. I will be co-moderating a panel with Valeria Bailey, the senior advisor for the Wickford group, and we're going to be talking to law firm leaders about a number of issues, one being what initiatives they're taking to enhance their relationships with their clients. So that'll be interesting. So I hope you got a lot out of this program, and I hope you join us for the other programs. Thank you very much for joining, and panelists, thank you.
Thank you.